For 99% of human history, no one ever burned a calorie they didn't have to. It sounds like a joke or a lazy Sunday afternoon justification, but it is a hard biological truth. Our ancestors were not gym rats. They were not weekend warriors. They were calorie-saving experts who would have looked at a modern treadmill with the same confusion we might look at a machine designed to help us bleed. In their world, effort was an expensive currency, and they spent it only when the return on investment was survival. But you probably don't feel like a survival expert when you're standing in a crowded airport, staring at the silver doors of an elevator. You've been sitting for hours on a flight, your lower back is starting to thrum with a dull ache, and the stairs are right there. They are empty, wide, and objectively better for your heart. Yet, you find yourself shifting the weight on the ball of your left foot, waiting for that elevator to ding. There's a tiny, nagging voice in your head, a little whisper of modern guilt that tells you that you're being lazy. You think about the step counter on your wrist or the fitness goals you set on New Year's Day. You feel like you're failing a test that didn't even exist a century ago. Why do we feel that specific low-level shame for simply doing what our bodies want to do? Think about that moment of choice for a second. That split-second hesitation between the stairs and the lift isn't a character flaw. It's actually a bridge, a direct link between your modern brain and a hunter-gatherer standing on a savanna 200,000 years ago. To that ancestor, the idea of climbing stairs for no reason would be madness. If there was a way to get to the top of a hill without moving their legs, they would have taken it every single time. They had to, because for most of our history, the bank of human energy was always on the verge of bankruptcy. Imagine your body as a high-stakes checking account. In this modern world, we live in a state of infinite deposits. You can walk into a grocery store and, for the price of a few minutes of work, walk out with enough calories to fuel a marathon. But for an ancient human, the deposits were irregular and unpredictable. Some days the bank was empty. Other days, you found a beehive or a kill, and the account was flush, but you knew a drought was coming. In that economy, exercise, the act of spending energy for the sake of spending energy, is the equivalent of taking a stack of $100 bills and lighting them on fire just to see the flames. It is a biological disaster. But if our ancestors were saving every penny of energy, how did they ever manage to hunt or survive at all? This brings us to one of the most significant scientific upsets in recent history. For a long time, we assumed that ancient humans were basically Olympic athletes by default. We figured that because they lived active lives, they must have been burning through calories like a furnace. We looked at groups like the Hadza people in Tanzania, who still live a hunter-gatherer lifestyle today, and we made a logical leap. We saw the men walking 10 miles a day to track game, and the women spending hours digging up stubborn tubers or carrying heavy containers of water. We assumed their metabolisms were running at double the speed of a typical office worker in New York or London. In 2012, an evolutionary anthropologist named Herman Pontzer decided to actually test this. He went to Tanzania with a team of researchers and used a high-tech method called the doubly labeled water technique. This involves having participants drink water that has been enriched with non-radioactive isotopes of hydrogen and oxygen. By tracking how these isotopes leave the body through sweat and urine, researchers can calculate exactly how much carbon dioxide the body is producing, which gives an incredibly precise measurement of every single calorie burned. The world expected the Hadza to be caloric outliers. We expected their daily burn to be astronomical. But when the data came back, it sent a shockwave through the fitness world. After accounting for body size, the Hadza, people who walk miles every day and do intense physical labor, burn almost exactly the same number of calories as a sedentary person in a Western city. A man who spends his day trekking across the hot African scrub burns no more energy than a man who spends his day sitting in a swivel chair and driving a car. Is it possible that moving more doesn't actually mean burning more? This sounds like it breaks the laws of physics, but it actually reveals a stunning piece of human engineering called the constrained total energy expenditure model. Pontzer's research suggests that the human body has a secret ceiling for how much energy it's willing to spend in a day. When the Hadza are more active, their bodies don't just keep adding to the total bill. Instead, the body starts cutting costs elsewhere. It turns down the dial on background processes. It reduces inflammation. It slows down the reproductive system. It manages stress hormones differently. It's like a smart house that dims the lights in the basement because you've turned on the air conditioning in the living room. Your body is so committed to this energy saving plan that it has spent millions of years perfecting the art of not moving. This is why your brain is hardwired to find the path of least resistance. When you choose the elevator, your brain is actually making a highly logical evolutionary decision based on a world where food is scarce. It doesn't know that you have a refrigerator full of yogurt and a pantry full of pasta. It still thinks it's 50,000 BC, and it's trying to make sure you have enough energy left over in case a leopard shows up tonight. If our bodies are so good at compensating, does that mean the active life of our ancestors is actually a myth? Not exactly. While they weren't burning more total calories, they were moving in a way that is fundamentally different from how we exercise today. We tend to view movement as a discrete event, a 60-minute class, a 3-mile run, a session at the gym. We spend 23 hours being as still as statues and then 1 hour trying to undo the damage. Our ancestors did the opposite. They practiced what researchers call low-intensity habitual physical activity. A 2016 study published in the journal Nature looked at our closest living relatives, chimpanzees. It found that even in the wild, chimps are inactive for about 10.5 hours out of every 12-hour day. They aren't swinging through trees for fun. They are sitting, they are grooming, they are resting. When humans split from the lineage that led to chimps, we did start moving more because we had to travel further for food, but we kept that underlying rest-first philosophy. The Hadza don't have a word for exercise because the concept of moving for no reason is completely foreign to them. They move because there is a tuber to be dug. They move because there is a honey-guide bird leading them to a hive. They move because the camp needs to shift to a new water source. Every single step has a why attached to it. And the moment the why is satisfied, they stop. They sit, but even their sitting is different. They don't have ergonomic chairs that support their entire weight and let their core muscles turn into jelly. They squat or they sit on the ground, which requires a constant, low-level engagement of the muscles just to stay upright. What if the physical strength we admire today is actually just a fraction of what we used to possess? This is where the science gets truly fascinating and a little bit humbling. We often look at elite athletes today as the pinnacle of human physical potential. We see Olympic rowers or professional CrossFitters and think, this is what humans can be. But a 2017 study by Dr. Alison McIntosh at the University of Cambridge looked at the bones of women who lived during the early days of farming, roughly 7,000 years ago, by using CT scans to analyze the structure of their arm and leg bones. The researchers found something startling. These ancient women who spent their days tilling soil, grinding grain by hand for hours, and carrying heavy loads had arm bones that were 30% stronger than those of modern elite rowers. Think about that. These weren't professional athletes. These were just average women of their time. They weren't exercising to build muscle. Their bodies were simply responding to the relentless, unavoidable demands of their environment. The human body is incredibly plastic. It only builds what it absolutely needs because muscles is expensive to maintain. If you don't use it, the body evicts it to save on the energy bill. Our ancestors didn't have to think about leg day because every day was leg day, arm day, and core day combined. Their fitness was a byproduct, not a goal. And because it was a byproduct of their survival, they didn't have to struggle with motivation. You don't need motivation to walk 10 miles when the alternative is your family going hungry. Does this mean the very comfort we crave is the thing that's making us fragile? This is the central paradox of being a human in the 21st century. We have finally achieved the dream of our ancestors. We have built a world where energy is cheap and effort is optional. We have the elevators, the cars, the delivery apps, and the remote controls. We have successfully designed a world that satisfies our deepest evolutionary urge to be lazy. And the result is a massive global mismatch. Evolutionary biologists call this BIHAC theory. It's the idea that our bodies are still running software designed for the Stone Age, but we are living in a digital hardware environment. Our bodies expect us to be walking 5 to 10 miles a day. They expect us to be carrying heavy objects and squatting on the floor. When we don't do those things, the systems start to glitch. Our cardiovascular systems become less elastic. Our metabolic systems lose their ability to handle sugar properly. Our immune systems stay in a state of high alert, causing chronic inflammation. Daniel Lieberman, a Harvard professor and one of the leading voices in evolutionary biology, points out that we are currently suffering from diseases of comfort. Type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and many types of back pain aren't just lifestyle choices. They are the direct result of a body that is being given exactly what it was programmed to want: endless rest and endless calories. We are like a high-performance sports car that is only ever driven at 5 miles per hour in a parking lot. Eventually, the engine starts to carbon up and the battery dies, not because it's a bad car, but because it's not doing what it was engineered to do. How did we turn a biological survival strategy into a source of personal shame? This is perhaps the most modern part of the whole story: the moralization of movement. Because we no longer have to move to survive, we have turned movement into a virtue. We praise people who run marathons. We look down on people who spend their weekends on the couch. We have turned exercise into a test of character, a way to prove that we are disciplined and good. But if you look at it through the lens of history, this moral framework is completely absurd. A hunter-gatherer wouldn't think a marathon runner was virtuous. They would think they were a fool for wasting so much energy. They wouldn't think the person on the couch was lazy. They would think they were a genius for finding a safe place to conserve resources. By turning exercise into a moral issue, we have actually made it harder for ourselves to move. We've added a layer of psychological friction to an already difficult biological task. When you feel guilty about skipping the gym, that guilt isn't coming from your biology. It's coming from a culture that is trying to solve a biological problem with shame. But shame is a terrible fuel for long-term change. It burns hot and fast, and then it leaves a pile of ash. The reason most people struggle to stick to a fitness routine isn't because they lack willpower. It's because their willpower is fighting against 2 million years of evolutionary programming that is screaming, "Why are you doing this? Stop! Save the calories! There might be a famine tomorrow!" So what is the alternative? How do we live in this modern world without becoming a victim of our own success? The answer isn't to try and become a primitive human. You don't need to quit your job and go live in the woods. But you can start to recognize the mismatch for what it is. You can stop viewing movement as a chore or a punishment for what you ate, and start viewing it as a biological input that your system needs to function correctly. Your body doesn't need you to suffer. It just needs you to not be a statue. This is why NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, is becoming such a big topic in health science. NEAT is the energy we spend doing everything that isn't sleeping, eating, or sports-like exercise. It's the walking to the mailbox, the fidgeting at your desk, the standing while you talk on the phone, the cleaning of the house. In terms of long-term health, this background movement is often more important than the hour you spend at the gym. It's the closest modern equivalent we have to the low-intensity, habitual movement of our ancestors. The people who are the most fit in the world today, the ones who live the longest and have the lowest rates of chronic disease, often aren't gym addicts. Look at the blue zones, the areas of the world where people regularly live to be over 100. They don't exercise in the way we think of it. They don't have gym memberships, but they live in environments that nudge them into movement. They garden. They walk to the market. They knead bread by hand. They live in houses with stairs. Their lives are inconvenient in exactly the right ways. When you realize that your urge to take the elevator is just a piece of ancient survival software, the guilt starts to evaporate. You realize that you aren't fighting yourself. You're just managing a very old, very efficient machine. And you can start to outsmart that machine. You can find ways to build purposeful movement back into your day so that you don't have to rely on a fluctuating supply of willpower. But does this mean we should give up on the gym entirely? Not necessarily. In a world where we no longer have to dig for tubers or carry water, the gym is a necessary, if strange, invention. It's a place where we go to pay a tax of effort that our environment no longer collects from us. But we can change how we think about that tax. We can stop seeing it as a moral obligation and start seeing it as a way to clear the carbon out of our engines. We can stop being surprised that it's hard because we know it's supposed to be hard. Every fiber of your being is designed to resist unnecessary effort. Every time you actually make it to the gym, you aren't just working out. You are performing a minor miracle of overriding your own evolution. There is a certain freedom in that realization. You are not a lazy person trying to be active. You are an active species living in a world that is trying to make you still. The struggle is real, it is biological, and it is shared by every other human on the planet. Even the person on the treadmill next to you, who looks like they're loving every second of it, has a brain that is quietly asking them why they aren't sitting on a comfortable rock instead. We are the first generation of humans who have to consciously choose to move. Every generation before us moved because they had to. We have to move because we know what happens when we don't. It's a different kind of burden, a psychological one rather than a physical one. But it's one that becomes much easier to carry when you understand the history behind it. The next time you're at that airport standing before the elevator, take a moment to look at your feet. Notice that slight, reflexive shift of your weight onto the ball of your left foot. It's the same shift your ancestors made as they waited for the heat of the day to pass, or as they scouted the horizon for a reason to run. That tiny movement is a message from the past. It is your body doing exactly what it was designed to do, looking for a way to save you. But as you feel that weight shift, remember that the silver doors in front of you are a trap. They offer the comfort your ancestors would have died for, but they deliver a stillness that your biology wasn't built to survive. The elevator is the ultimate victory of our species, but it is also a slow, silent threat to the very heart that keeps you standing there. You don't want to exercise because your brain thinks you're saving your life, but in this new world, the only way to actually save it is to do the one thing your ancestors would have found unforgivable: to move when you don't have to. The ding of the elevator is the sound of a world that has finally become too easy. It is the sound of a predator that doesn't have teeth, just a perfectly smooth, effortless ride to the top. So, look at those stairs. They aren't just a path to the next floor. They are a way to remind your heart that the world is still wide, still difficult, and still worth the effort. You aren't lazy, you're just human. But sometimes being human means knowing when to tell your evolution it's wrong. It means acknowledging that the ball of your foot is already poised for the climb, even if your brain is pleading for the rest. The guilt you feel isn't a sign of failure. It's the friction of two worlds rubbing together, and the only way to stop the heat is to start walking. So when those doors open and that cool mechanical interior beckons, remember the Hadza. Remember the Neolithic women with arms stronger than rowers. Remember that your body is a high-performance machine that is currently starving for a challenge. You don't need a gym, a trainer, or a moral framework to be whole. You just need to stop waiting for the ding. We have spent 6 million years perfecting the art of doing nothing. We have finally succeeded. And now the hardest, most revolutionary thing you can do is simply take the first step. Not because you have to, not because it's virtuous, but because your heart is the only engine you'll ever own that breaks if you don't use it. It's easy to get lost in the numbers and the studies. It's easy to talk about caloric budgets and constrained energy models. But at the end of the day, it comes down to that single physical sensation: the pressure of your shoe against the floor. That pressure is the only thing that's real. The rest is just a story we've built to explain why we're so tired of being comfortable. The discomfort of the stairs isn't a sign that something is wrong. It's a sign that your body is waking up. It's the feeling of a system coming back online after a long artificial sleep. It's the feeling of being an animal in a world that wants you to be a consumer. And in that moment, the choice is yours. You can let the machine take you up, or you can use the machine you were born with. If you found this exploration of our biological mismatch helpful, consider looking at your own daily routine through this evolutionary lens. What are the small, inconvenient choices you could make today that would give your body the movement it's evolved to expect? We're all trying to navigate this new world in old bodies, and the more we share these strategies, the better we all do. Do you find it harder to fight the urge for comfort in the morning or the evening? Let's talk about how we can design our lives to make movement the path of least resistance again, the ding sounds. The doors slide open. The elevator is empty, waiting, and perfectly still. You look at the stairs, then back at the silver interior. You feel that familiar weight shift on the ball of your left foot, that ancient instinct to save yourself from the climb. But now you know the truth. That instinct isn't your friend anymore. It is a ghost from a world where food was a miracle and rest was a luxury. In this world, the elevator isn't a convenience, it's a coffin for your vitality. The most dangerous thing you can do is exactly what your body is screaming for. Take the stairs. Not for the calories, not for the steps, but to prove to the ghost in your genes that you are still the master of your own movement. Because in a world designed to keep you still, every step is an act of rebellion, and you're going to need that rebellion. Because as you stand there, the elevator doors are starting to close. They are smooth, silent, and inevitable. They represent the ultimate comfort, the perfect rest, the end of effort. And as they click shut, they offer you one final haunting truth. The more comfortable we make our world, the less room there is in it for us. The stairs are still there, silent and demanding. They don't care about your evolution. They don't care about your guilt. They only care about the weight on the ball of your foot. So before the world becomes too soft to live in, move. Move because you can. Move because your ancestors couldn't imagine a world where you wouldn't. Move because the moment you stop is the moment the mismatch finally wins. And you've already spent enough of your life waiting for the ding.